Have you ever had the quiet feeling that people around you were pulling away, but no one ever explained why? Maybe the conversations have grown shorter, the visits less frequent, or there's a subtle shift in how others treat you. And yet, you can't quite put your finger on it. Here's a hard truth. As we grow older, some habits settle into our daily lives that feel normal to us, but make others quietly uncomfortable. Not because we're bad people, but because we've stopped noticing. And those habits, they can chip away at the very dignity, warmth, and connection we spent a lifetime building. This video isn't here to shame you, it's here to shine a light. Today, we're going to gently uncover 12 subtle habits that many seniors fall into without realizing, but that can deeply affect how others see and treat you. These aren't about looks, they're about energy, presence, and self-respect. And the good news is they're all fixable. Before we begin, let's make this a conversation, not a lecture. If you're open to reflecting and growing, no matter your age, comment 1 below to let us know you're watching with a curious heart. And if you believe content like this is important for seniors, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, because we're here to talk about the things no one else will, and your support helps keep these honest conversations going. 1. Neglecting personal hygiene. One of the first things people silently pick up on, but rarely mention, is when someone begins to slip in their personal hygiene. And we're not talking about anything dramatic. It's the little things. Clothes that look like they've been worn 3 days in a row. Hair that hasn't been brushed. Fingernails that go just a little too long. A faint odor that lingers a little longer than it used to after you leave the room. These may seem small, even harmless, but they speak volumes. You see, hygiene isn't just about cleanliness. It's about how we carry ourselves. In our younger years, we maintain those habits without even thinking, showering before we leave the house, putting on a fresh shirt, making sure we look presentable. But as we get older, routines shift. Energy fades. Motivation becomes harder to come by. And slowly, we start to ask ourselves, does it even matter anymore? That shift is so subtle, you might not notice it happening. But the people around you do. They may not say anything, especially the younger ones. They won't risk embarrassing you. They don't want to make you feel ashamed. So instead, they quietly adjust. They sit a little farther away. They stop initiating hugs. They shorten the visit. And you're left wondering why things feel different. But what they're reacting to isn't you. It's the silent message your self-care is sending. That maybe you've given up a little. That maybe you don't see yourself the way you once did. And whether they realize it or not, they begin to treat you differently, not out of cruelty, but out of discomfort. Because when someone stops caring for themselves, people unconsciously stop showing the same warmth and closeness. Here's the part no one says out loud. When you stop taking care of yourself, others feel it. It changes how they interact with you, how they respect you, how close they're willing to get. Not because they don't love you, but because something in your energy has shifted. Now, this doesn't mean you have to dress like a model or wear cologne every day. But putting on a fresh shirt, brushing your hair, keeping your nails trimmed, those small actions say, I still care. I still matter. I still have pride in myself. And people respond to that, because people feel your presence before they hear your words. And hygiene, believe it or not, is one of the strongest reflections of presence. It tells the world that you're still showing up, that you're still in the game, that you still want to be treated with dignity and closeness, not distance. And that's a message worth sending. If you're still here and this first habit made you pause and reflect, comment 1 below to let me know. And if this message resonates with you, please subscribe and turn on the bell, because there are 11 more eye-opening truths coming up that most people won't tell you, but you deserve to hear. 2. Speaking without a filter. As we grow older, something curious begins to happen. That inner voice, the one that used to whisper, maybe don't say that, gets quieter. Sometimes it fades completely. And suddenly, words start slipping out without the usual pause or filter. You speak your mind more freely. Maybe you even feel a little proud of it, thinking, I've lived long enough. I've earned the right to say what I want. And while that may feel like freedom to you, to the people around you, it often feels like something else, discomfort. There's a fine line between honesty and bluntness. And over time, if you're not paying attention, it's easy to cross it without realizing. Maybe you've made a comment about someone's weight, how they're raising their kids, their relationship, or what they're wearing. Maybe you followed it with a chuckle and said, "I'm just being honest," or "People today are too sensitive." But what's really happening is this: you're not just speaking truth. You're speaking it without kindness. And that makes all the difference. The people on the receiving end, your children, your grandchildren, even your neighbors, they rarely tell you how it makes them feel. They don't want to disrespect you. They won't confront you directly. They just start pulling back. They make the conversations shorter. They stop inviting you to gatherings. They keep things surface level because they're bracing for the sting of another sharp remark. It doesn't matter how good your intentions are. The truth, when delivered without compassion, lands as criticism. And when it happens repeatedly, people start to guard themselves around you. They stop opening up. They stop trusting you with the parts of their life that matter most. That's not the legacy you want to leave. This doesn't mean you have to walk on eggshells or bottle up what you feel. But it does mean learning to pause. To ask yourself, is what I'm about to say kind? Is it necessary? Is it something I'd want someone to say to me or to my grandchild? Because words, especially from someone older, carry weight. They can either build bridges or burn them. When you wrap your truth in warmth and care, people listen. They respect you. They seek your wisdom. But when it comes coated in sarcasm or judgment, they tune out, not because you're wrong, but because it hurts. And here's the irony: the softer you speak, the louder your words are heard. Because people know you're choosing grace over ego. That's what real influence looks like in old age. If you've ever caught yourself saying something and later thought, maybe that came out wrong, then comment number 2 below to let me know you're still with me. And remember, subscribing helps you stay connected to conversations that truly matter as we age with awareness and dignity. 3. Wearing clothes that don't fit anymore. There's comfort in routines, the same breakfast every morning, the same chair by the window, the same clothes you've worn for years. And that familiarity can feel like home. But when it comes to clothing, what once felt timeless can quietly shift into something else: carelessness. You may not notice it happening. Pants that are suddenly too loose, but you keep wearing them. Shirts that cling in new places or have faded beyond recognition. Outdated styles from decades ago. Shoes that have long lost their shape. These aren't just about fashion. They're small signals that you may have stopped noticing yourself the way you once did. Most people won't tell you. They won't say, "Hey, maybe it's time for a new outfit." They'll keep quiet out of politeness. But inside, they're forming an impression. Not about your taste, but about your presence. When clothes no longer reflect who you are now, they create a quiet disconnect. People begin to wonder if you've checked out of the present moment. It's not about chasing trends or trying to look like someone half your age. It's about honoring yourself enough to dress in a way that says, "I still care. I'm still here." Clothing, whether we like it or not, is one of the first things others notice. And when someone sees an older adult in clothes that fit well and feel fresh, even if they're simple, it creates a feeling of respect. It says, this person hasn't faded into the background. They're still showing up. Think about it. Would you walk into an important meeting wearing something that no longer fits? Probably not. So why wear it to your daily life, which matters even more? Some people say, "Well, I'm comfortable." And that's fair. But comfort and neglect aren't the same. You can be comfortable and still look put together. You can be relaxed and still signal pride in who you are today, not who you were 20 years ago. Even small changes, a shirt that brings out your eyes, a pair of pants that fit just right, can shift how people engage with you. They smile a little more. They treat you with a bit more attentiveness. Not because of the fabric, but because of what it reflects: self-respect. And when you walk through the world with that quiet dignity, it changes how people experience you and how you experience yourself. If this part made you think about what's hanging in your closet or how you've been showing up lately, comment number 3 below. Your presence matters more than ever. Let it show. And stay with me. We still have many more habits to uncover together. 4. Interrupting or dominating conversations. We all want to feel heard, especially as we grow older and carry decades of experience, wisdom earned from mistakes, victories, heartbreaks, and lessons no one taught us. So when a conversation comes up and we recognize the subject, it's natural to want to jump in, to share what we've learned, to explain how we handled it. At first, it feels helpful. You might think you're offering valuable advice or steering someone away from a mistake. But what you may not notice is this: the more space you take up, the less room there is for anyone else. It starts with a quick interruption, then a story, then a few suggestions. And before long, 10 minutes have passed and no one else has had a chance to speak. This habit doesn't come from arrogance. It often comes from love, from wanting to protect the people you care about, from wanting to feel useful in a world that often moves too fast and leaves older voices behind. But here's the thing: when conversations feel one-sided, people start to pull back. Not in anger, but in quiet fatigue. They may still call you, but the calls get shorter. They may visit, but the conversations feel more surface level. The deep connection starts to fade, and you might not even realize why. It's not because they don't care. It's because they don't feel heard. Especially with younger generations, your adult children, your grandchildren, this can be a fragile balance. Many of them already feel unsure of how to connect across age and experience. If they begin to feel like every conversation is a lecture or a lesson, they start to avoid them altogether. Not out of disrespect, but out of self-preservation. This doesn't mean you have to stay silent. Your voice matters. Your insight matters. But so does their space to think, to feel, to speak, to process. You don't have to hold the entire conversation. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is ask a question, then really listen. Let there be pauses. Resist the urge to jump in unless they ask for your opinion. Because something beautiful happens when you give people space. They fill it. They open up. They come to you more, not less. They trust you more deeply. And when you do speak, your words carry more weight because you've earned their listening, not demanded it. Ask yourself, next time you're speaking with someone you love, am I listening or just waiting to talk? That single shift can change everything. If this part made you reflect on a recent conversation, maybe one where you did most of the talking, comment number 4 below. And keep watching, because what's coming next is something most people over 60 fall into without even noticing. 5. Complaining about kids these days. It often begins with a passing thought. You see a teenager glued to their phone, and you think, back in my day, we actually talked to each other. Or you hear a younger adult say something that sounds naive or unrealistic, and you quietly shake your head, thinking they have no idea how the real world works. At first, these thoughts stay in your mind, but over time, they start slipping into conversation. And then, they become your go-to commentary. The problem: you might not realize just how deeply those comments land. When you constantly criticize or mock the younger generation, whether it's about their values, habits, technology use, or lifestyle choices, it sends a powerful signal, even if that's not your intention. It tells your kids, your grandkids, and the people around you that you're not really interested in understanding them. It says you're holding on to a version of the world that no longer exists, and that you have no desire to meet them in the one they live in now. That hurts more than people let on. They might smile. They might brush it off. But inside, they pull away. Because no one wants to open up to someone who constantly dismisses who they are, what they believe, how they live. It's easy to forget that every generation has been misunderstood by the one before it. Every parent once said, "Things were better when I was young." And every child has rolled their eyes at that phrase. But now that you're the elder, your role isn't to win the comparison, it's to build the bridge. That doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. You're allowed to have opinions. You don't need to embrace every new trend or idea. But what you can choose, what you must choose if you want to stay close to the people you love, is curiosity over criticism. Ask instead of assume. Explore instead of dismiss. Trade kids today don't get it for "tell me what that's like for you." Because when younger people feel respected, they open up. They start asking you questions. They start seeking your perspective, not because they have to, but because they want to. And that's where real influence lives, not in complaining about how things used to be, but in connecting to how things are now. So the next time you're tempted to say, "The world's going downhill," pause. Ask yourself, is this building connection or putting up a wall? If you've ever caught yourself making that kind of remark and realized later it didn't help, comment number 5 below to let me know you're still with me. Because what we talk about next is another habit that slowly chips away at how others experience you, even if they never say a word. 6. Ignoring modern etiquette. There's a kind of social awareness that often goes unnoticed until it's missing. Things like speaking loudly on your phone in a quiet cafe, playing a video without headphones in a waiting room, standing too close to someone in line, or letting your phone ring out loud in a place where silence is expected. These things may have felt harmless in years past, maybe even normal. But today, they quietly make people uncomfortable, even if no one says a word. You may not even realize you're doing it. That's the tricky part. Because when these small moments happen, most people won't correct you. They'll just glance at each other, avoid eye contact, or move to another seat. They won't explain. They'll just quietly adjust. And in that silence, something happens. The impression they form of you starts to shift. They don't think you're a bad person, but they might begin to assume you're unaware, or worse, that you don't care. It's not personal, but it is real. The truth is, social expectations change. What was once acceptable, talking on a landline in public, making casual remarks to strangers, raising your voice to be heard, now comes across as inconsiderate. And unfortunately, older adults aren't always given the benefit of the doubt. People expect that by now. You should know better. So when they see these lapses, they don't chalk it up to misunderstanding. They interpret as disregard. And that's not the legacy you want to leave behind. The good news? This is one of the easiest things to shift. All it takes is a little awareness. Look around in public spaces. How are others managing their volume, their space, their tech use? Notice what feels respectful, what seems out of place. Start adjusting in small ways, like using headphones, stepping aside when on a call, or lowering your voice in shared spaces. This isn't about being uptight or overly careful. It's about showing that you're still present, still engaged with the world around you, that you care how your actions affect others, even in the smallest ways. And the people around you, they notice. They may not say anything, but something softens. The judgment fades. Respect grows. Your grandchildren see it. Your neighbors feel it. And without realizing why, they start leaning in instead of pulling away. Because in a fast, noisy world, someone who moves with grace and awareness stands out more than ever. If this part made you reflect on how you carry yourself in public spaces, comment number 6 below. It's never too late to show others that you're still paying attention and you still care. And the next habit we'll explore is one that can slowly wear down even the strongest relationships without you realizing it. 7. Oversharing medical problems. It's become almost a stereotype. Get a few older folks together and the conversation eventually turns into a list of surgeries, medications, and the latest doctor visits. And while sharing health updates might feel like a way to connect, or even just a way to vent, it can slowly start to weigh down the people around you more than you might realize. Of course, your health matters. You've been through a lot. And it's only natural to want someone to listen, especially when pain, fatigue, or uncertainty have become part of your everyday life. But when those topics dominate every conversation, when every call with your daughter turns into a rundown of blood pressure numbers, or when your grandson's visit becomes another list of symptoms, it changes something. The tone shifts. The energy dips. The relationship starts to feel more like a medical update than a moment of connection. You might not mean to burden anyone. In fact, you may think you're just being open. But the people around you, especially the younger ones, don't always know how to respond. They feel helpless, or overwhelmed, or like they're stepping into a role they weren't prepared for. So instead of leaning in, they start pulling away. Not out of selfishness, but out of emotional exhaustion. That's not to say you shouldn't talk about your health. You absolutely should, with the right people, at the right times, and in the right measure. But if it's becoming your default topic, it's worth asking, is this how I want to be known? Do I want to be remembered for my ailments or for the parts of me that still light up when I talk about life? Because even now, your world is bigger than your symptoms. There are books you've read, memories you've held on to, dreams you still carry, joys that haven't left you, even in the middle of struggle. And those are things that pull people closer. Those are the moments that make others want to stay longer, call more often, feel less burdened, and more connected. So yes, share your truth. But let it be one part of who you are, not the whole. Ask how others are doing. Tell a story that made you laugh. Talk about the garden, the weather, the neighbor's new dog. Not because small talk is better, but because it makes space for lightness. And sometimes in heavy seasons, that's the greatest gift you can give. If this part made you pause, even for a second, comment number 7 below. Because the next habit we'll explore is one that hides in plain sight, but slowly makes people feel like you're no longer open to seeing the world through new eyes. 8. Being stubborn about outdated beliefs. As we grow older, our beliefs often become the framework through which we understand the world. They're not just opinions, they're stories we've lived, values we've upheld, lessons we've passed down. So it's no surprise that we want to hold on to them. They've shaped who we are. But over time, those once useful beliefs can harden. They can turn from guiding principles into rigid walls. And when that happens, something subtle but powerful begins to shift in how others experience us. You might catch yourself saying things like, "That's just how it is," or "People are too sensitive these days," or even, "I don't care what the science says, I know what's right." Those statements may feel honest, firm, even protective. But to the people around you, especially the younger ones, they often sound like resistance. Not strength, not wisdom, just resistance. The world has changed, and it's still changing. Fast. Technology, gender roles, mental health awareness, language, how people work and live and love, it's all evolving. And if you respond to those changes with stubbornness instead of curiosity, people begin to quietly label you as someone they can't talk to about certain things. Someone who won't understand. Or worse, someone who doesn't want to. They won't tell you this directly. They won't start an argument. They'll just steer the conversation elsewhere. They'll edit themselves around you. And before long, you're no longer in the loop. You're on the outside of a world that's still spinning. That kind of isolation doesn't happen all at once. It happens through little moments. Moments where someone wanted to share something but hesitated. Moments where a discussion could have brought you closer, but instead became another reason to stay silent. But here's the truth. Openness doesn't mean abandoning your values. It means staying teachable. It means being willing to update your understanding without losing your core. It's saying, "I never thought of it that way. Tell me more." That kind of humility is rare, and it's powerful. It creates connection instead of conflict. It earns admiration instead of avoidance. And maybe most important of all, it shows that even in your later years, you're still growing, still evolving, still alive in the richest sense of the word. Because real relevance doesn't come from holding tight to the past. It comes from showing up in the present, ready to listen. If this section stirred something in you, even if just a small shift, comment number 8 below. Because next we'll talk about a habit that has less to do with words and everything to do with how you physically move through the world and how it affects the people around you. 9. Walking or moving without awareness of space. As we age, it's natural for our movements to slow. Our balance changes. We become more cautious, more deliberate. And there's absolutely no shame in that. But what often happens, and few people ever point it out, is that we start to move through the world with less awareness of how our physical presence affects others. You've likely seen it before, or maybe done it yourself without realizing. Standing in the middle of a grocery aisle with a cart turned sideways. Stopping suddenly in a busy hallway or public walkway. Walking slowly through a crowd while drifting left and right without noticing the people trying to pass. Most of the time, none of this comes from rudeness. It comes from being focused inward on your task, your thoughts, your footing. But to the people around you, especially those in a rush or carrying children or bags. It creates small, repeated moments of frustration. And they won't say a word. They'll just step around you, sigh under their breath, avoid walking with you in the future. They won't mention it, but they'll remember how often they had to adjust themselves because you weren't aware of how you were moving. Over time, those little moments add up. People may start feeling like they have to manage you when you're out together. Not because you're incapable, but because your presence requires constant adjustment. And that feeling, even if they never say it aloud, creates distance. Let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with moving slowly or carefully. That's a normal part of aging. But there is a difference between moving slowly and moving without awareness. You can be cautious and still be considerate. You can pause and still keep to one side. You can walk at your own pace while still leaving space for others to pass with ease. In public places, airports, sidewalks, markets, churches, these small acts of spatial awareness send a powerful message. I'm still present. I still care about how I move through the world. I respect the shared space we're in together. And that message softens how people treat you. They offer patience more freely. They walk beside you with ease, not stress. Because in a world that often feels rushed and crowded, someone who moves with quiet grace stands out. Not because of how fast they walk, but because of how thoughtful they are while doing it. If this habit made you reflect, even just a little, on how you move through daily life, comment number 9 below to let me know you're still with me. Up next is something that many people shrug off as just a joke, but may be doing more harm to your relationships than you realize. 10. Making jokes that don't age well. A good sense of humor is one of the most beautiful things to carry into old age. It lightens heavy moments, brings comfort to awkward situations, and reminds everyone around you that joy doesn't have an expiration date. But here's the quiet truth: not all humor ages well. And some jokes, especially the ones that once got a laugh decades ago, may now leave people uncomfortable, even hurt. You may not notice it right away. You might crack a joke the same way you always have, a little sarcasm, a teasing remark, maybe a comment based on an old stereotype or a jab at someone's background, weight, or choices. You say it with a smile. Maybe you even follow it with, "Relax, I'm just messing with you," or "Come on, it's just a joke." But what you feel as lighthearted, others may feel as sharp. The world has changed. Humor today is no longer just about getting a reaction. It's about knowing your audience and understanding that laughter at someone's expense, even if unintentional, can build invisible walls. Especially with younger people who were raised in a culture that emphasizes empathy, inclusiveness, and emotional safety, these kinds of jokes don't come across as charming. They come across as disconnected. And most of the time, they won't tell you. They'll just laugh politely, then start guarding themselves. They'll avoid deep conversations or emotional openness. Not because they don't love you, but because they don't feel fully safe around you anymore. The irony is, many older adults don't mean harm at all. The intention is to break the ice, to be playful, to stay relevant. But here's what matters more than intention: impact. That doesn't mean you have to silence your humor or stop being yourself. Humor is still a gift. But the kind of humor that brings people closer is the kind that makes everyone feel safe, included, and seen. It's the kind that lifts, not cuts. It's laughing with people, not at them. And here's the secret to lasting connection: people are drawn to those who can laugh at themselves, who can tell a story that makes others smile, not squirm, who know when to joke and when to listen, who are wise enough to adapt and warm enough to still have fun. So next time you're about to make a joke, pause. Ask yourself, is this kind? Will this make them feel seen or singled out? Because in the end, the best laughs are the ones that invite people in, not push them away. If you're still with me, and this section made you rethink a few past comments, comment number 10 below. Because the next habit is one that starts small but can slowly rob you and your loved ones of a kind of respect that every aging person deserves to keep. 11. Acting helpless when you're not. Aging comes with real challenges. There's no denying that. Tasks that once felt easy can now feel draining. Climbing stairs, opening jars, figuring out a new phone. It all takes more time, more effort, more energy. And asking for help when you truly need it? That's not weakness. That's wisdom. But there's a quiet line that can get crossed without even realizing it, when asking for help becomes a habit, even when you're still capable. Maybe it started with small things. You asked your son to set up the remote, even though you could have figured it out. You told your daughter, just do it for me, not because you couldn't, but because it was easier. Over time, this kind of behavior becomes familiar, even comforting. But it can also slowly change how the people around you see you. At first, they don't mind. They're happy to assist. But when it becomes the default, when they're always lifting, reaching, reading, organizing, remembering, doing, the weight of it grows. And underneath the surface, something begins to build: resentment. Not because they don't love you, but because they feel like they're being pulled into a role they didn't choose. One where you stop trying, and they have to overcompensate. Here's the truth most won't say. People admire effort more than ease. Your children, your neighbors, your friends, they respect when you try. Even if it's clumsy. Even if you don't get right the first time. When they see you still engaged, still curious, still trying to figure things out on your own, they feel proud. They don't see an aging parent. They see someone with spirit, with dignity, with independence. What's even more complex is that this helplessness often doesn't come from laziness. It comes from fear. Fear of getting it wrong, of appearing foolish, of being left behind in a world that's constantly changing. So you hand off the responsibility. But every time you do, you give away a little piece of your agency. And that adds up. This isn't about pretending you can do everything. It's about knowing the difference between "I need help" and "I've stopped trying." It's about showing others and reminding yourself that you are still capable, still learning, still standing on your own 2 feet. Because there's power in asking for help, but there's also quiet power in saying, "I've got this." So whether it's cooking a meal, learning a new app, or carrying your own bag from a car, do what you can. Try before you ask. And know that the people around you will respect you even more when they see your effort. If this section made you reflect on times when you might have asked for help out of habit, not need, comment number 11 below. And stay with me, because the final habit we're about to discuss may be the most quietly damaging one of all, especially when it becomes part of your identity. 12. Pretending you're always right. After decades of living, learning, and navigating life's twists and turns, it's only natural to feel confident in what you know. You've raised a family, held jobs, managed crises, and seen the world shift more than once. So when someone questions your viewpoint or offers a different way of doing things, it might feel not just strange, but threatening. And without realizing it, you start insisting more, correcting more, shutting down other ideas before they finish being spoken. At first, it seems harmless. You interrupt a story to fix the details. You dismiss a new parenting method your child is trying. You say, "Trust me, I know better," because, well, you've lived longer, haven't you? But here's what begins to happen. People stop challenging you. Not because you've convinced them, but because it's easier to stay quiet. And when people start censoring themselves around you, that's not respect. That's retreat. The truth is, many older adults don't cling to being right out of arrogance. They do it out of fear. Fear of becoming irrelevant. Fear of being left behind in a fast-changing world. Fear that if they admit they don't know something, it means they're losing control. But ironically, that constant need to be right has the opposite effect. It doesn't keep you close to others, it slowly pushes them away. People don't want to feel corrected. They want to feel heard. They want to feel safe sharing ideas, even if they don't have all the answers. And when being around you starts to feel like a debate instead of a dialogue, they pull back, not because they don't love you, but because it's exhausting. But here's the powerful shift. When you begin to let go of needing to have the final word, something amazing happens. People start coming to you more often. They seek your thoughts because they know you won't steamroll theirs. You become the wise presence in a room, not because you talk the loudest, but because your calm, curious voice stands out. True wisdom isn't just about how much you know. It's about how much you're still willing to learn. It's about listening with your whole heart. About saying, "That's an interesting perspective," instead of, "Let me tell you how it really is." It's about trusting that your value doesn't come from being right. It comes from being real. And here's the irony. When you stop trying to win, people start listening more. So if you've ever caught yourself needing to correct, explain, or prove, ask yourself, is this about connection or control? Because one builds bridges, the other builds walls. If this final reflection hit home, comment number 12 below. And stay with me because we're about to wrap things up with a final message that brings everything together and may just shift how you carry yourself from this moment forward. Final thoughts. Now that we've walked through these 12 hidden habits, take a moment. Not to criticize yourself, not to feel shame, but to truly reflect. Which of these quietly crept into your daily life without you realizing? Which ones caught you by surprise? Which made you feel seen and maybe a little uncomfortable? That discomfort is okay. In fact, it's a gift. Because most people go through life unaware of how their small behaviors affect others. But the moment you start noticing, that's the moment you begin to change. And that kind of change isn't loud or dramatic. It's subtle, quiet, powerful. It's you waking up tomorrow and saying, I'm going to speak with more warmth today. Or, I'll pause before I give advice this time. Or even, maybe it's time I let go of that old joke I've always told. These aren't flaws, they're blind spots. They don't make you a bad parent, a bad friend, or a bad elder. They make you human. And the beauty of being human, at any age, is that you can keep evolving. You can grow softer, wiser, more self-aware. You can continue becoming someone people want to be around, not out of duty, but out of genuine love. Aging well isn't about hiding your wrinkles or pretending to be younger than you are. It's about becoming more you, the truest, kindest, most connected version of yourself. And sometimes that means asking hard questions, holding up a mirror, choosing grace over habit, choosing growth over pride. Because dignity isn't something you're handed at a certain age. It's something you keep earning, one small choice at a time. So as you go forward, let these 12 habits serve not as a checklist, but as quiet reminders. Opportunities to re-engage, to clean up the invisible edges of your presence, to carry yourself in a way that makes people feel safe, warm, and deeply respected when they're with you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll notice something shift. A longer phone call, a deeper conversation, a tighter hug. Not because the world changed, but because you did. If you made it to the end of this video and found even one insight helpful, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Share the habit that spoke to you most, or the one you're most ready to work on. Your reflections help others feel less alone. They remind us all that growth doesn't stop at 30 or 50 or 80. It's always possible. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us keep creating thoughtful, honest content for people who believe that aging is not the end, but the beginning of something deeper, something richer, something more true. We're so glad you joined us today. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.